Good evening, ma'am. I am Lauron Jericho Pirater, a second-year college taking up the Bachelor of Science in Criminology. This is my report about CA 200, Module 2, and I am your student in CA 200, Section F. Submitted by Lauron Jericho Pirater and submitted to Mrs. Jill Rose Ador. First slide, History. History is the study and the documentation of the past. Events before the invention of writing systems are considered prehistoric. So, many years before that is considered a history. There are so many different events or happenings that are happened. So, before until now, it is considered a history and called prehistory, or called as a prehistory. History is an umbrella term comprising past events as well as the memory, discovery, collection, organization, presentation, and interpretation of these events. So as I've said a while ago, many years before, there many story are happened. Then through memory, discovery, collection, organization, or presentation and interpretation, we can identify the history, or we will understand the history through this. Philosophy is the study of the fundamental nature of knowledge, reality, and existence, especially when considered as an academic discipline. So, philosophy is the study of the fundamental of knowledge, our learnings, our reality in our surroundings, maybe in many ways. Philosophy, from Greek by way of Latin, philosophia, love of wisdom. So, philosophy comes from the Greek word, and meaning of philosophy is love of wisdom. The rational, abstract, methodical consideration of reality as a whole or of fundamental dimensions of human existence and experience of philosophical inquiry is a central element in the intellectual history of many civilizations. 4 characteristics of philosophical thinking are wonder, contemplation, reason, and intellectual independence. These are the 4 characteristics of philosophical thinking. As a person, we have this kind of characteristic, like we wonder, we have contemplation, reason, and intellectual independence as a person or as an individual. The philosophical study of knowledge is called epistemology. The term knowledge can refer to a theoretical or practical understanding of a subject. It can be implicit as with practical skill or expertise, or explicit as with a theoretical understanding of a subject, formal or informal, systematic or particular. Realism. In philosophy, the viewpoint which accords to things which are known or perceive an existence or nature which is independent of whether anyone is thinking about or perceiving them. So, realism means that the reality. Example is that every day that we encounter or we face, or the reality that we see every day through our eyes or through our activities every day, that is example of realism in philosophy. The study of philosophy enhances a person's problem-solving capacities. It helps us to analyze concepts, definitions, arguments, and problems. Yes, um, realism is this is a this is an example of realism, so that we can solve anything, like we know how to handle ourselves or how to manage ourselves through actions or doings. It contributes to our capacity to organize ideas and issues, to deal with questions of value, and to extract what is essential from large quantities of information. So, through this, we can develop in ourselves on how to communicate, how to understand things or actions, whether it is good or bad. Then, how to understand information, or how to make communication to other person or to yourself. What is philosophy and examples? Philosophy is a set of ideals, standards, or beliefs used to describe behavior and thought. An example of philosophy is Buddhism. What are the four types of philosophy? The four main branches of philosophy are metaphysics, epistemology, axiology, and logic. So these are the four branches of philosophy. These are the four types of philosophy. So, next is the Sing Sing. In full, Sing Sing Correctional Facility, maximum security prison located in Ossining, New York. In use since 1826. It is one of the oldest penal institutions in the United States. So Sing Sing is it is a rehabilitation, or it is a rehabilitation for or a prison, and Sing Sing is very famous or well known in this place or in the whole world. It is also among the most, as I've said a while ago, it is also among the most well-known in the country, especially notable for its harsh conditions in the 19th and 20th centuries. So, Sing Sing Prison is very well known anywhere. Like, this prison is very known in the whole world, and Sing Sing prison is one of the oldest prison in the whole world. Sing Sing prison on the Hudson River at Ossining, New York, originally known as Mount Pleasant Prison. It was constructed in the village of Sing Sing. So, Sing Sing Prison is located it is a mountain, and the surroundings is sea, like no roads, no land. It is whole sea. Then Sing Sing Prison was constructed at the village of Sing Sing. So that's why this prison called Sing Sing prison on the east bank of the Hudson River, some 30 miles or 48 kilometers north of New York City. It was designed to provide additional prison space and to replace Newgate Prison. Many years later or gone, they upgrade or they add more facilities on this prison. Construction was undertaken in 1825 by convict laborers under the supervision of Elam Lynch, warden of Auburn State Prison. So, as what I've said a while ago, they add more facilities in this prison yearly in 1825, and by convict laborers under the supervision of Elam Lynch. He officially became head of the new prison when it opened in 1826. Through it was not completed until 1828. The initial facility had 800 cells. So, after they add more facilities or areas on this prison, it is not easy or it is not very fast to add more facilities. That's why it opened in 1826 but still not completed until 1828. The prison of population rose in the mid-19th century, resulting in more construction. The 4-story complex was soon 6 stories. And the prison eventually housed more than 1,600 inmates. So, in 19th century, it is already a 2-story building. It will become a 6 stories building and have an inmates more than 1,600, because most of the early convicted criminals traveled by boat to Sing Sing. The phrase up the river came to mean going to prison. As what I've said, Sing Sing prison is located in the center of the sea. That's why for those people or person who convicted a crime and convicted criminals or they traveled by using boat, because that is the only way to do when they are put in Sing Sing prison. One of the notable visitors to the prison was Alexis de Tocqueville, author of Democracy in America. The French government sent him and Gustave de Beaumont to the United States in 1831 to gather information about the American penal system. The two men were amazed at the total subjugation under which prisoners worked and the administrative power the warden wielded at Sing Sing. Lynch resigned as warden of Sing Sing in 1830 and returned to Auburn in 1838. He was asked to leave that prison a year later after the death of a prisoner who was punished severely for feigning illness. Despite this record, Sing Sing rehired Lynch in 1843. Whippings and floggings were commonplace punishments at Sing Sing. Frequently used was the cat o' nine tails a cruel wiping contraption, whose lashes were often tipped with metal or barbs. Its use was finally abolished by the New York State Legislature in 1848. In addition, while Lynch was warden, inmates were expected to refrain from making noise, which included talking. With the advent of the electric chair in 1891, Sing Sing became notorious for its execution. Although the electric chair was developed at neighboring Auburn, almost all executions. So, because of this execution order law, Sing Sing became notorious and like known as very danger prison within the state were carried out at Sing Sing until 1963. The infamous death chair was later moved to Green Haven Prison. Sing Sing was also the site of reforms that affected by the national penal system. Reformer Thomas Mott Osborne, who developed his penology theories. While voluntary incarcerated for a year at Auburn, served as Sing Sing's warden in 1914 to 1915 and 1916, but his immediate sweeping changes were hastened, and he resigned under intense political pressure during his tenure. However, the first psychological work with inmates began. More reforms were instituted under Lewis Edward Lewis, who served as warden from 1920 to 1948. He notably improved the living conditions within the prison and allowed inmates to participate in sports. That's why until now, even if you are in prison or you are convicted crime and you are a criminal inside in the prison, they have an activities or short activities like that you can play as long as it is allowed inside of the prison. Thomas Mott Osborne was an American prison administrator, prison reformer, industrialist, and New York State political reformer. Thomas Mott Osborne. Sing Sing Prison Cell, a cell at Sing Sing Prison, Ossining, New York, Library of Congress, Washington. In 1901, the residents of Sing Sing Village changed its name to Ossining. They wanted to distance, if not disassociate, the town from the notorious prison. For that same prison, in 1970, the state renamed the prison Ossining Correctional Facility. So, that's why, until now, this prison is very known of his name as Ossining Correctional Facility. Auburn Correctional Facility, a state prison on State Street in Auburn, New York, United States. It was built on land that was once a Cayuga village. It is classified as a maximum security facility. This prison is very strict when it comes in security, or this prison is very secured area. The Auburn system, also known as the New York system and congregate system is a penal method of 19th century, in which persons worked during the day in groups and were kept in solitary confinement at night, with enforced silence at all times. Yes, um, those prisons or their prisons inside the they they make it that they can go outside during morning, like they gave a work, but in the evening or in the night, it is very strict and it is not allowed to um, be not silenced. The silent systems involved during the 1820s at Auburn Prison in Auburn, New York, as an alternative to and modification of the Pennsylvania system of solitary confinement, which it gradually replaced in the United States. Whigs favored this system because it promised to rehabilitate criminals by teaching them personal discipline and respect for work, property, and other people. Among notable elements of the Auburn system were striped uniforms, lockstep, and silence. So these are the elements of the notable of Auburn system. During the 19th century, prisoners had no rights nor any opportunity to live semi-comfortably. The Auburn system established several characteristics. So, in 19th century or during 19th century, prisoners had no rights nor opportunity to live semi-comfortably. So, as we all know that if it is not if we do not have rights or opportunity to live semi-comfortably, it is very very struggle for us, because as we all know that it is inside in a prison. We cannot do or what we want, because we are inside, we are a prisoner, so we must follow what is the we must follow the inside rule that were unique to the world of disciplinary conditions. Silence was the biggest factor among rules for the prisoners. John D. Cray, a deputy warden at the Auburn prison, demanded that the prisoners be completely silent to take away the prisoners' sense of self. When the sense of self was taken away, many convicts obeyed the warden's wishes. The second characteristic of the Auburn system was community activities during the regimented times during the day. Prisoners had tasks to perform. Some of these included making nails, barrels, clothing, shoes and boots, carpets, buttons, carpenter's tools, steam engines and boilers, cams, harnesses, furniture, brooms, clocks, buckets, and pails, saddle trees. So that is the rule that they give to all prisoners inside during daytime. That is their activities or the doings that they should do every day. During the 1840s, the prison began to produce silk using silkworms and trees. The Auburn Correctional Facility was the first prison to profit from prisoner labor. The prison had many sightseers in the 19th century. The goal of this system was to instill good work habits and ideas of industry that were supposed to rehabilitative. Elam Lynch, in association with John Dacre, developed a revolutionary system of transporting convicts with the prison. The prisoner marched in unison and locked their arms to the convict in front of them. The prisoners had to look to one side and were not allowed to look at guards or other inmates. The clothing at the prison was a grayish material with horizontal stripe. In 1821, a new principal keeper, Elam Lynch, was appointed to run the prison. He believed in the disciplinary power of the lash and used flagging to punish even minor infractions. In 1839, a prisoner died from neglect and overflogging. The Committee of Auburn and other staff members of the Auburn Theological Seminary petitions to bring the issue of the punishments of the state of government punishment to the state government. The law stated that 6 blows on the neck back with a cat or 6-stranded whip was the most punishments that could be assigned for any one offense. In 1846, another meeting was congregated to abolish the use of whips. Flagellation could only be used for riots or severe cases, when whipping was prohibited. Guards and keepers sought new ways to punish the disorderly. The shower bath consisted of a barrel about 4.5 feet high with a discharge tube at the bottom. The prisoner was stripped naked, bound hand and foot with a wooden collar around his neck to prevent him moving his head. The barrel with the inmate inside was placed directly under an outlet pipe where water, sometimes ice, would pour down. Another form of punishment was the yoke. The yoke used iron bands around the neck and arms of the prisoners. So it is very bad to know. In the early days of the prison, women inmates were held in the windowless attic atop the high-security prison. They shared a single room and slept in the same area, where they worked primarily at picking wool, knitting, and spooling. In 1838, all women prisoners were transferred to the then new female wing at Sing Sing. In 1892, the women returned to a new building at the Auburn Prison. The Auburn Women's Prison remained in operation until 1933, when a new maximum security wing for female inmates opened at Bedford Hills. Auburn Correctional Facility is located in Cayuga County, New York. It is a maximum security prison that houses adult males. The current capacity of this facility is 1,821 offenders. So see, there are so many current capacity of this facility in all of Flinders. Inmates are housed in 5 blocks A, B, C, D, and E. So it is divided because there are so many. Opened in 1816, it established a disciplinary and administrative system based on silence, corporal punishments, and congregate group labor. In architecture and routine, Auburn became the model for prisons throughout the United States in the early 19th century. Many Americans believed that industrialization and dramatic demographic, economic, and political upheavals had conspired against the traditional controls of family, church, and community. From their perspective, these moral guardians could no longer adequately control disorder. They saw crime as the product of social chaos. Necessary to its eradication was a structured environment in which deviance could be separated from the disorder of society and the contagion of one another. Their solution was to create the penitentiary, a new institution of reforming, ultimately restoring social stability. Auburn originally used congregate cells, but in 1821, Warden William Brittain borrowed the concept of solitary cells from the so-called Pennsylvania system. Brittain designed a unique 5-tiered cell block of 2 rows of single cells placed back-to-back in the center of the building. Cells measured only 3.5 feet or 1.06 meters wide, 7.5 feet or 2.3 meters long, and 7 feet 2.1 meters high. Door face outer walls lined with grated windows that provided indirect light and air. This pattern of small inside cell blocks was later adopted by most state prisons in the United States, whereas the Pennsylvania system's inmates did handicraft work in their cells. Auburn prisoners labored in congregate workshops, offsetting imprisonment caused by fulfilling private industry contracts. A hidden passageway with small openings surrounded the work area, allowing inspectors and visitors to surreptitiously monitor the inmates. Auburn briefly 1821 to 1825 implemented a 3-level classification system. Under it, minor offenders labored in workshops during the day and retired to separate cells at night. Serious offenders alternated their days between solitary confinement and congregate work. The most hardened criminals were placed in solitary confinement without work. After numerous suicides, instances of mental illness, and attempted escapes, the governor of the New York terminated the classification system and the experiment in solitary confinement. Subsequently, all male inmates worked in congregate shops by day, returning to individual cells at night. Females first committed to Auburn in 1825 were relegated to an attic and excluded from regular work and exercise. To ensure that inmates did not corrupt one another, Brittain's successor, Elma Lynch, enforced a quasi-military routine of absolute silence, strict discipline, and economic productivity. In response to Bell's head-shaven, inmates dressed in striped clothing silently marched in lockstep formation to and from their cells for meals and work assignments. Letters Letters were banned, and the chaplain was the only occasional visitor. Flogging and other forms of corporal punishment enforced the rules. Such regimentation was thought necessary to restrain the rebellious nature of the offenders. Eventually, overcrowding made the silent system unenforceable, and Auburn's system of the discipline deteriorated into corrupt and lax routines of harsh punishments. After the Civil War, the spirit of reform withered, and contract labor was no longer profitable. Despite the demise of ideal system, Auburn remained the model of nearly a century, primarily because it had been inexpensive to construct and maintain. Unlike Auburn or Sing Sing, Pennsylvania's Eastern Penitentiary was intended to keep convicts separated even as they worked, even in order to prevent any earthly contamination or destruction that might impede their repentance. Hence the term penitentiary. Located on Cherry Hill on the outskirts of Philadelphia, Eastern represented one of the most imposing and expensive architectural achievements in the United States to date, and it contained innovations such as running water and flush toilets in all the cells. Although Beaumont and Tocqueville found it incontestable that its perfect isolation secures the prisoner from all fatal contamination. They favored the more cost-effective Auburn plan, which seemed more likely to enable states to profit from convict labor. Pennsylvania system penal method based on the principle. The solitary confinement fosters penitence and encourages informations. The idea was advocated by the Philadelphia Society for alleviating the miseries of public prisons, whose most active members were Quakers. In 1829, the Eastern State Penitentiary on Cherry Hill in Philadelphia applied his so-called separate philosophy. Prisoners were kept in solitary confinement in cells 16 feet high, nearly 12 feet long, and 7.5 feet wide per 0.9 by 3.7 by 2.3 meters, an exercise yard completely enclosed to prevent contact among prisoners. So that's all my report about mom. Thank you and God bless.